Hi, I'm Garnbreak1, and this is Midgardia's Cool Crowdfunding Show. I'm here today with Steven. How's it going?
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Steven, and I am the creator of Huckleberry, a Weird West RPG.
Hell yeah. So, first off, why don't you tell me about Weird West?
Weird West is like the American Old West, but with fantasy and supernatural elements. Huckleberry throws in a lot of horror elements, especially like folk horror type scenarios. So there's a lot of like zombies and monsters and all sorts of fun goodies for your cowboys to fight.
So, we're talking kind of like Red Dead Redemption meets Vampire the Masquerade.
Absolutely. Yeah, the way I like to describe it is a Hellboy in Tombstone.
Nice.
If you're familiar with any of those franchises, it's got like the cinematic action that Tombstone has, the over the top cheesy drama of Tombstone, mixed with like the folklore tales, the monsters as heroes of Hellboy.
Right on, right on. I I like that take on it because it's usually humans hunting various supernatural what's-its, like Van Helsing and the like.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a big element of the game. There's this in the game. There's this weird force. It's called the Wyrd, Wyrd, and it's like this force of nature that's very corruptive, almost like radioactive. And everyone in the Weird West succumbs to it eventually. There's nothing you can do to cure it or prevent it. You can just try to slow it down. And some people are more susceptible to the elements of that corruptive force, and that can turn them into monsters, or they can use that to become heroes, like your characters, the mavericks of the game. They're occult bounty hunters, and they use their connection to the weird to hunt down the awful creatures that are created by it.
Protecting a world that hates and fears them, right?
I actually try to stay away from the hate and fear element. The Mavericks are not necessarily good people. You can decide, if you're anti-hero or whatever. But the fact that they put their lives on the line to hunt down these monsters commands a sort of respect. And in this world, there's no federal government. It's only local level. So the Mavericks are really the first and last line of defense against these corrupted creatures. And that, while people may not like Mavericks, that does mean that they are accepted and often appreciated to have one around.
Right on, right on. Yeah, I mean, weird skeleton dude, a little unsettling at first sight, but he shoots the shuffling undead, so we take that.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're shooting at the bad guys and not at us, they're not too upset. And appearance is entirely non-mechanical in the game as well. There are suggested ideas. For instance, like some of the pre-gens look like actual devils. There's one who is like a cyborg and has a mechanical arm and leg. Uh, but you can also look like a regular human. The weird corruption can be very subtle and it can affect you in any way you want. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you will immediately stand out visually.
All right, I gotcha, I gotcha. That is an interesting take on it. I admit I was expecting full like vampires, Frankenstein, flaming head guys.
And if that's what you want to create, that's awesome. I had one person who said, I want to play an octopus gunslinger. And I'm like, okay, well, here's how we can break it down into the mechanics. You take fast reflexes, you take that you're ambidextrous or whatever like that. Uh, but me personally, I prefer playing like uh, the Clint Eastwood, man with no name. So if I was creating a character, I probably would look pretty simple. But the game does absolutely allow for the entire spectrum.
So how does Huckleberry work mechanically?
So the basic mechanics are fairly simple. You have an attribute and a skill, and each one of those has a different die size associated with it. Attributes can be paired with any skill. So there are four attributes. There's grit, quick, reckon, and spirit. And those can affect how you use your skills. So say expression as one of your skills covers all forms of communication. That could pair with grit in your strength that you're trying to intimidate someone. It could pair with your reckon, where you're trying to logically persuade someone. It could pair with spirit, where you're trying to empathize with them. The attribute reflects your intent of how you're going about using the skill. So when you figure out your intent, you figure out which attribute and skill, you roll both dice associated with them, and a 10 or better is a success. If you roll a 12, a 14, 16, or 18, you actually get extra benefits. You're dealt an ace, which is a sort of meta currency. It's like the fuel that allows your successes to be even better. And it also can be saved for later. So if you don't spend your ace to make your skill check even better, you can tuck it up your sleeve. And when you fail a skill check later on, you can actually pull out an ace like you're cheating. Like I've had this ace tucked up my sleeve, so this failure is actually a success now.
That's really cool. I really like that. It deals with the uh, we've all played a lot of D&D 5e, I assume. You get the classic like, oh
Yeah, yeah.
boy, D20 on a, I don't know, or sorry, natural 20 on a perception roll. Hooray. Um it's a nice way of dealing with that.
Yeah, I like it because it gives a lot of agency to the players in when they want to uh, consume their resources and kind of like flatten out their luck curve. As one of the great bards, Kenny Rogers, said, you have to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. So it really is part of like the learning curve of the game of like, when do I save my aces? When do I spend my aces? You can only have 4 in your sleeve at one time. So there is a point where you're very much encouraged to spend them. You can't just hoard them like potions in Skyrim. But there is a point where it's like, okay, I've been going without aces for a while now. I need to bank some of these because if I take another failure, I'm going to be out.
Is it a fairly lethal game then?
No, not incredibly. I do try to lean into the cinematic heroics of it, and death is a possibility. Like it's possible to die, but it's more of a push your luck style game where you might get knocked out of a fight, but chances are you're going to take a scar, which will be a narrative effect. And once you take so many scars, your character retires. Like essentially, they give up the life, they hang up their gun belt, and they go be a farmer or open a saloon somewhere. So you could die early on, and if the dice go poorly, you could die in as few as like 2 hits. Uh, so it's not that there is no danger there, but like I said, I try to give more agency to the players about how their character arc goes. So if they do push their luck and like this character is just beat to sorry, I don't know if I can swear or not.
You absolutely can, don't worry.
If this character is beat to shit, like he's gonna just be like, or they're gonna be like, okay, I'm done for now. I'm hanging up, and then a new Maverick will come in.
Right on, right on. It's still important to know when to walk away and to know when to run though, of course.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. I've used that joke before, and not many people can put it back at me, so I appreciate that.
Always glad to. I really love the art, by the way.
Oh,
Astute
thank you. Yeah,
astute viewers may notice it in the reflection there. Um, but yeah, no,
yeah.
it's
The
wonderful.
artist is George Sellis. I've worked with him before, and he's phenomenal. He's I think he's a genius. He does exceptionally great work. You give him a concept, and I just like describe something gross or something I think is cool. I give him 2, 3 lines, and he just sends back this beautiful piece of work. And he's just a consummate professional. It's always a pleasure to work with him. I'm so happy that he was willing to take on this project.
What's the timeline of
Oh, I did
oh
have a
man.
dog show up. I told
Hey
you I didn't
buddy.
think they would, but this is Cricket.
Oh, what a good dog. So what's the like release timeline of Huckleberry like? Because this isn't a typical crowdfunding project. You're not like going to Kickstarter or anything, I believe.
Right,
Um,
right. I'm in a very fortunate position where I'm able to create this project the way I'm envisioning it. And I've got the amazing support of friends, family, and my beautiful wife behind me that they're willing to put up with my crazy delusions. Uh, So I'm not going to Kickstarter right now. That's not to say it wouldn't happen in the future, but it would likely be for like a print run or something like that. Instead, it is releasing August 1st as an early access product. It The game is playable. It's very much playable. I'm running campaigns in it. I've played over 100 sessions of it. Um, but it, it still needs some elements added in, like for GM side things, like how to create bounties, for your characters to follow up on. There's going to be more mechanics about traveling and things like that. Right now, horses are not in the game. They're more of a narrative thing. So horses are going to be treated a bit like the big irons in the game, where like you can equip them, you can customize them, you can train them to do different things. You have different breeds that are better at certain things. So there's a lot that still needs to be done. So it'll be updating monthly or bi-monthly throughout the next year. And if everything goes according to schedule, it'll be a finished product uh, spring or summer of 2025. And everyone who buys the early access is going to get every single update along the way, along with the finished PDF.
Right on, right on. Can you tell me about the big irons while we're at it?
Yeah, so I call them big irons as a nod to Marty Robbins. People listening may catch on to me listening to a lot of country music here. It's the inspiration I have while I'm writing. So big irons are guns or weapons, not necessarily guns. Like a tomahawk can be a big iron, a bow and arrow can be a big iron, but essentially it's a weapon that is customized to a maverick. So uh, every big iron is a weapon, but not every weapon is a big iron. You spend your chips on them, which is the game's currency, and you can put mods on them. You can, if they have ammo, you can increase the ammo, decrease the ammo, increase range, decrease range, things like that. And it's really a big part of character progression is a character honing in how they want their big iron to be used. And there are other elements too, where like if you have a knife, you can silver it, so it'll change the damage type. And for like werewolves, they have an aversion to silver. You'll be able to do extra damage to them. So there's a little bit of a rock paper scissors element there as well, with what kind of big irons you have equipped and what kind of damage you're capable of dealing out.
Right on. I love a gun customization system. I may have spent too much of my money in Red Dead Redemption 2 on making my guns look super cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big part of it for me, is that I wanted it's not a class based game, and there are no levels. But I do want a deep progression system that feels rewarding. And for me, when I think of like being a cowboy, I want to be able to tinker with my gun. I want to be able to, say that this gun has a certain hilt that has, like something etched into it, and I've changed the chamber so it holds 8 shots instead of six. If you think of like Quigley Down Under, how he's got the rifle is as big a character as he is in that movie, and that's kind of the feeling that I want for the game as well. I want the guns to be a presence in the game.
Right, absolutely. Like Vera from Firefly.
Exactly. Yes. And I encourage people to name their guns, describe what they look like. The guns are broken up into broader categories. Like I don't have historical, like you won't see a Colt 45 in there, or a peacekeeper, peacemaker. I can't even
One of the
spit it out.
two. Don't worry about it.
But you'll see that there are revolvers, repeaters, shotguns, and things like that. And that's part of the way that I encourage you to just describe specifically what type of gun it is, whether it's a custom gun, whether it is a specific model. You can decide, and you can really flesh it out to make it your own.
I'm absolutely going for the Browning harmonica rifle, by the way, if I play this. With the like sideways magazine that feeds through. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So like in the game mechanics, you could choose to go with like the rifle, or a repeater would probably be a bit closer with like the magazine where you've got extra shots. And then you could change the extended magazine. You could add adjustable sights to it, things like that. So there really are a lot of mechanics where, like, if you see like the type of gun you want your character to have, you can build out that character.
Beautiful. Love it. I've watched a lot of Forgotten Weapons episodes in my time, so I have ideas. Um,
I'd love to hear some of them.
I mean that's the big one, but I I do like your approach to modeling the weapons. I have played games that have intricately modeled like 3 dozen models of pistol, real or imagined, and it's not worth it, honestly.
One of the games I love this game, Aces and Eights by Kenzer Co. It's very very crunchy though, and they have just gear list upon gear list of all their pistols, and they have the spreadsheets to back it up. And there's very I'm not disparaging Aces and Eights because I really enjoy it, but for me it can just be broken down into 8 different guns, and then the numbers let me tweak those on my own. Is how I feel about it.
Yeah, like I'm specifically thinking of the Morrow project where every gun's damage values are based on the muzzle velocity, and like that's cool, but um
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't need to pull out a reference encyclopedia to be able to figure out.
yeah. Oh, this one's been rechambered into 5.56. Hold on, let me redo the muzzle velocity math. Like it's
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly, exactly.
One thing that did catch my eye on the preview page is the put down roots section, where you talk about, the world changing and growing over time. Is that mechanical or purely narrative, or how's that all work?
So that's one of my favorite elements of the game, actually. And this comes from I'm part of a streaming group called Adventures in Lollygagging, which is the group that's publishing the book. And the way we play games is that we really embrace downtime. And I wanted mechanical rules to back up downtime in this game, especially because I keep going back to like cinematic representations of westerns because that's kind of what Huckleberry tries to emulate. There's a lot of you know Appaloosa for the most of that movie. They're in town. Like they're not going out and doing the stereotypical cowboy things. And I want to be able to embrace those moments and encourage them and still make them feel rewarding. So the way that you improve your character outside of buying new guns, customizing your guns, is through putting down roots. You have pastimes. There's a system of seasons, 4 seasons in a year. Each season can be broken down into about 6 chunks. And you can choose whether to spend one of those chunks called a stretch, pursuing a bounty, hunting down monsters, or spend a stretch doing a pastime, where you may be training with your rifle. You may be investing in the town. You may be investing in yourself, trying to grow your own wealth. You may be gambling the whole time. And there are actual mechanics in there to encourage you to do those things and to make connections with your town. The game assumes that there is a home base of sorts, that you have a hole in the wall that you retreat to in between bounties. And it really tries to encourage you to develop those relationships with NPCs and things like that in town. So yeah, there are absolutely mechanics behind that. It's one of the things I'm most proud of, the seasonal aspect to it. Like I said, Mavericks, the characters can like get wear and tear on them. So having like the town be another presence in the game where a new Maverick comes in and gets to learn the new people. The old Mavericks have these relationships already. I really just enjoy that aspect of RPGs, and I try to embrace it because it's something that like video games can struggle to do. That's not to say there are bad ones out there. Stardew Valley would be the clear example of a great one, but it's harder for a computer to simulate those types of relationships and the narrative growth and the changes that can happen. For instance, if Mavericks ignore a bounty and say just there's a werewolf on the loose, and Mavericks ignore it, suddenly that werewolf takes out a beloved NPC in your town as one of the consequences of ignoring it. And then, the Mavericks are driven to go hunt it down even more. And that's something that like games have trouble with, is that dynamic reactiveness. So I try to really lean into that with tabletop RPGs.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, the other few games I can think of that do a good job of that are like Dwarf Fortress, where anything that kills one of your dwarves gets named. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and of course Red
And
Dead
like the
Redemption. Sorry, go ahead.
Red Dead, of course,
Yeah.
the Nemesis system in Shadow of Mordor. You know, there are games that do it well, but I feel that they still have a ways to go before like they could compete with like an actual GM or a person who's like putting the time in and just, you know, dynamically thinking about how these consequences can apply to the characters. They know the players better than anyone else because, you know, we're real people and we've been playing together. I think that there's just a lot of opportunity there that I like to see explored.
Oh, absolutely. As nice as it is to walk up to a gun shop and have the guy out front go, "Hey, that's the guy who saved me from that snake bite." Um, you know, there's only so much you can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, exactly.
God, I love Red Dead Redemption 2. I need to play that again.
Oh, it's great. I've played quite a bit in my time too.
Uh, I did say this already, but the art is fantastic. Like the purple trench coat that turns into like flames as it reaches the ground. That's good
Yeah, so
stuff.
that's a Reaper. So that's one of the enemies in the game.
Oh,
Which is he's an it's an ex-lawman who is just as corrupt in death as they were in life, is what I say. So like if there's a sheriff that was corrupt and dies of, you know, some weird corruption or some sort of other unnatural cause, they can come back to life and wreak havoc, continuing to be a corrupt lawman throwing their weight around.
what a jerk.
Yeah. So one of the big elements in the game also is that a lot of the uh, drama in the conflict, like I talk a lot about like weird monsters and corruptions, but a lot of that comes from human flaws. So like the weird corrupts people and it kind of capitalizes on their flaws. So what I try to do when I'm creating monsters, oftentimes, especially when I'm writing the actual scenarios, is to think about like a flaw that can be understood and empathized with, if not condoned, and then just amp that up to 12 and think about like how the supernatural could change that and twist it and then turn this person into a creature or a monster that reflects that.
Right, right. I know I said this was gonna be a softball interview, and we can cut this next question if you're not comfortable answering it. Is the weird a metaphor for how the violence of colonialism turns us all into monsters?
Uh, no, but you're
Okay.
close. The weird is more about capitalism than colonialism. In Huckleberry, there are three big companies that are monopolies, and like I said, there's no more federal government. It takes place in like a Earth adjacent type setting. It's not actually on Earth. And there are three companies that exert dominance, and they're always vying between each other, and they're trying to become the one monopoly, and that's where a lot of the drama and the corruption comes from. I try to sidestep most of the colonialist elements in the game. Uh, Not because I'm trying to whitewash anything. I have a very big disclaimer in the front about how like the Western genre is built on, you know, these awful stereotypes and awful truths in history. And I sidestep them for the reason that I want the game to be inclusive for everyone. I want anyone to be able to sit down at the table and feel like they can partake and have fun, and not have any sort of subconscious baggage or overt baggage. I don't want a African American player to have to sit down at a table and then have someone else say, "Well, I'm playing an ex-slave or an ex-Southern aristocrat." That is not the game that I want to ever create or endorse. Um, so I've that's why it's in an alternate setting, and that's also part of the reason why I've taken colonialism uh, out of it, where it's a new world. There were not people that were already in the world. There are no people being pushed out of this world. So it's kind of like a blank slate. Not that I'm trying to whitewash anything, and I'm not a philosopher by any means. So this is just, you know, a gamer's perspective of trying to create a safe place.
Right, right, absolutely. Very well put. Um, sorry for suddenly chucking the hardball in there, but
No, no, I appreciate you asking it because it's something that I've grappled with a lot, especially in the early days of the game, of how I wanted to ensure that it would be safe from the ground up. I didn't want to create the game and then come back to it and realize like, oh, this doesn't really work. This makes people feel this way. It's a game. It's meant to make people happy, have fun, cry cathartic tears, not actual tears. And it's uh, from the ground up. I want to make sure that anyone who sits down at the table will feel safe and included, and not have any sort of uh, real world baggage thrust upon them. And that's actually a really hard thing to do in the Western genre as well, because there's so much history and awful, genocide, colonialism, uh, the awful stereotypes in the media. Even the history is bad enough, and then the history of the media can also be bad with the way that it portrays people, with the way it erases entire minorities from the time period. So it was a tricky thing to do. So I appreciate you asking about that, and I hope that when people see the game, they'll be able to see that I had good intentions there.
I hope so as well. Obviously, I'm not qualified to make that judgment myself, but it does look like it's coming from a good place, and you're doing the best you can with a genre that you love.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And it also goes back to how appearances are entirely non-mechanical. And also why I want to try and avoid that the Mavericks could be like hunted or feared by people.
Right,
Uh, you know, it's a person by person basis about whether someone likes you or not. That's not to say that there aren't awful people in Huckleberry. There are very, very awful people in Huckleberry, but they're always the villains. They're always very clearly the villains and meant for players to take down.
right on. Are there stats for Bigfoot? This is a much less serious question, but I've got the "I Love Bigfoot" T-shirt on, so
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's
yeah.
great.
It used to say "I
There.
love Alberta Bigfoot," but the Alberta fell off.
Oh no,
So yeah, we just got "I Love Bigfoot" now.
it's all right. You still love Bigfoot.
Yep.
It's still, yeah. Currently, Bigfoot is not in the game. That's not to say he won't be. One of the big projects for the game is filling out the bestiary. So right now in early access, there are 10 monsters in there with like a framework for GMs to like, use to expand on. I've got lots and lots of scenarios already in the works. There are 4 of them that are already written, and then there are 4 more that are still being written by myself and other authors. And the intro scenario will be released for free as part of the early access as well. The other scenarios have monsters and NPCs in them that also expand the world and give you more tools to play with. So Bigfoot is not in there right now, unfortunately, but he very well could make an appearance.
I look forward to it. Are there any other parts of Huckleberry that you'd like to talk about that we haven't had the chance to get into yet?
Talk a bit about character creation. So it's fairly simple in my mind. In the you have 4 traits. You have blood, flesh, disposition, and calling. And blood represents your inherited physical traits. If you have devil ancestry, you might take the devil child trait. There's Fey child. There's ironclad, which is like the cyborg, steampunkish, and Haxon, which is like a witch type character. And all of those are mechanical, and they give you an idea of like how visually they might appear. But you can also reflavor them and refluff them however you want. So, like the Devil Child has a bit of a rage mechanic. It could just mean that you're a wild child. It doesn't mean that you actually have devil ancestry, or it could mean that you're red skinned and have horns. For those of you that like to play tieflings out there, that's your choice. Uh, and then the flesh traits represent your physical traits that not necessarily inherited from ancestry, just what reflects your physical strengths. And there's like an iron fist, Where if you want to create a Hellboy type character, you might take Iron Fist, to represent the rock hand. If you're playing the steampunk cyborg, it might be an actual Iron Fist. If you're just playing a big bruiser, it might be that you just have an Iron Fist you're good at punching. Maybe the metaphorical Iron Fist.
Fists the size
Uh,
of cans of ham. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of ways that you can play with that and build on it. Disposition represents your personality, and then calling represents your training, like your occupation. And in the game, everyone's occupation is that they are a maverick, and there are no classes or anything like that. But calling represents like maybe you're better at tracking than some people. Maybe you're a bit of a chef. There's something called biscuit shooter, where once per stretch, if you make a meal, people get dealt more aces that they can sleeve to like balance out their luck later on. So there's a lot of fun stuff that I really like playing with flavor wise when building characters. And it's you pick from those four categories and you mix and match to decide who your maverick is.
Right on. I immediately want to play like Vampire Man Tracker or something. Have you seen Man Tracker?
Talking about like the vampire man tracker, there's a trait called leech, where you literally can drink people's blood, and it's inspired by vampires. But I changed the name because I thought leech just felt more evocative. It felt more gross, which is kind of what I try to lean into when it comes to Huckleberry. I always go gross. And like when you drink blood, you can reduce one of your injuries. So like injuries, you don't have hit points, you have injury tiers, and a major injury may become a moderate injury when you drink someone's blood and stuff like that. Uh, the like a softened version of a vampire. And then of course there is the actual trait tracker, where when you're tracking someone, if you would fail, you can automatically succeed instead. So a lot of the traits are about making sure, not necessarily that you are uh, the best at what you do, but that you're the most consistent with what you do. And it varies by trait to trait, of course, but a lot of it is like if this is what you are good at, then you won't fail at it very often.
Right. So, so my character, is gonna have leech, tracker, and harmonica rifle. We're pretty much good to go.
Yeah, yeah. And there are traits called legendary traits. You don't get those at character creation, but you get to print the legend, where one of your downtime activities can be essentially building up a reputation, whether you're doing that or whether your deeds are just there are rumors flying through town. It's entirely up to the player and the GM how that works out. But after you have enough of a reputation, you gain a legendary trait, and several of them relate to like the use of repeaters and things like that. So that would absolutely go with the harmonica rifle right there, putting down like covering fire, where if a maverick targets a creature you've shot at, they get a raise at it. So like you assist your allies in that way. Or if you just the inverted of that is if you shoot at someone who's already been shot at, you get a raise. There's a lot of interplay in combat about Mavericks working together. No man is an island in Huckleberry. You're always like passing off advantages to each other, trying to set each other up for the next hit.
Right on, right on. This game sounds fantastic, honestly.
Thank
I'm
you.
a
I appreciate that.
I'm a sucker for Wild West stuff. I like gunfights and video games. Uh, you know, it looks right up my alley.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's very validating and vindicating. Because I put a lot of work into this, and there's always that little neurotic part in the back of your head that's like, "Am I the only one that's going to like this?" So it's always great to hear.
I know that feeling incredibly well. But no, I think this is the kind of thing that's going to resonate with a good amount of people.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for it, and I'm going to Gen Con in a couple days, and the event's sold out there. So I'm super excited to be able to play with complete strangers. It's not that I've never played with complete strangers. I run Huckleberry at local game nights in my area, but it'll be fun to just do on a bigger scale at Gen Con and be able to share it with everyone.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be awesome. I wish I'd be there, but unfortunately I live a bit far.
No, I get it. it's more economical for me because, like I said, I grew up in Indiana, so I've actually got
Yeah.
family in Indianapolis, so I get to bunk with them while I'm there.
Nice. Yeah, accommodations are brutal,
Yeah,
honestly.
that saves a lot of money right there.
Yeah. So I think that about wraps up almost everything. Um, there is one thing that I'd like to talk about a little bit that is not related to Huckleberry, but it is Western-ish, Western Canada. Um, I live in Alberta, as all of our viewers know, uh, and the town of Jasper, about a third of it burnt to the ground recently because of the wildfires, because of, global climate change and all of the harm the oil industry and constant fossil fuel use has done to our planet. There will be a link in the description or the comments below to a page for the Canadian Red Cross where you can donate to the rebuilding efforts and, other wildfire things. If you donate through there, currently donations are being matched by the government of Canada and the government of Alberta. So every dollar you donate is effectively $3, which is a great value. Please look at that. Consider donating. A lot of people have been evacuated, and not into Alberta, but actually over the mountains, which I'm sure is substantially worse. Um, yeah. Look at that, and also check out Huckleberry, which is also going to be in the comments, and shoot people as Bigfoot with a giant gun. What more could you want?
Nothing for me.
Exactly. All right. Have a good night, everybody.